talking today about the need for North American women to be positive all the time, this toxic or false positivity and this desire to be perfect, referred to as the North American disease. So we get ourselves into, into a situation where we feel we've got to keep up the appearances, if you will. Talk about, not being able to speak about negatively about any experiences that we might have, and that we must always see the glass as half full. There's always this, and I think about, speaking with people about, something that may be of a challenge, and people often say, "Oh, look on the bright side," and it's not, we're not given that opportunity often to take a moment and sit in some of the discomfort that we have, and why this exists. I don't know. I think there's lots of history in terms of how women were portrayed and needed to from a social society perspective, always be positive, always be perfect, always be dressed, and as we said, makeup and hair curled, and certainly in North America, and more so as a result of that. But is it because we want, and I come from that background. I was in a long-term marriage. Do we want to make our husbands happy and not let them down in terms of what we might portray as things not being perfect? So I think there's a number of things that could contribute to it. And from that perspective, it's been something that has been very difficult, I think, as a challenge for North American women to break out of. And so at this point, having come through 18 months of COVID, I see this sort of breaking out where women are starting to emerge, if you will, from having spent some time away from busy lives that they may have led prior to the pandemic, trying to, we call it keep up with the Joneses, having your children in lots of activities, and, all the fancy houses and the fancy cars and the fancy vacations and the fancy clothes. And I know from my perspective, I haven't worn a business suit in 18 months. So it makes you think differently about what your priorities are. And when I think from families' perspectives, a lot of them have come out of it realizing that there was too much rush, too much that competition. So it either went one way or the other. And we're kind of coming out of that. Things are getting back to normal. We're seeing, I think, more, and we had seen over the last 18 months, more vulnerability, more people sharing some of the psychological damage that has been taking a toll on them for some time. And I think for women in particular, I mentioned, I'm late in my career. I'm recently divorced. I spent much of my life, chasing that dream, chasing that expectation, not wanting to live up to that expectation, but feeling I had no choice. And that as a result of that, I was in some ways, internally stricken, had strife. How do I make this make sense to me? And so, as I matured and as I began to see the impact of some of the choices I had made, as I grew older, I saw the toll that it was taking, and I've made different choices. And I think a lot of women I spoke to in my age group have they're in the same boat. They've kind of looked back and they see that it's something that's not a false, it's not like a true, vulnerable, real persona. And from that perspective, I think there's value in, and I've certainly learned this with the opportunity to come out of that shell, that part of myself that was just about what everybody else saw and what everybody else needed, instead of what was important to me, and opening up that side of myself. I've actually opened myself up to quite a bit of richness in terms of the ability to connect with people on a much different level. It's not about a conversation about the weather or a conversation about someone's attire. It gets to a much deeper level than that. And for me, that's that connection, and that connection to others that we rarely see when we're in this world where everybody around us is sort of cookie cutter beautiful and, cookie cutter perfect. So I think that COVID has presented us with an opportunity to make some real change. But I think the way that change, and the only way that change can occur, is if it happens on a collective basis. And for that change to be sustainable, it has to be done with our eyes wide open. So when we remove the armor and we expose ourselves to the risk of doing that, we have to be careful and understand that there is that risk. And we don't, I think from that perspective, want to slide back into the way things used to be and the way things were, and to continue to keep up that effort and motivation to continue to move in this direction and away from this ideal of perfection that has cost us so dearly.